Awesome.
Okay, so in our study of the life of Jesus, we have come cruising along to Luke chapter 13. Again, we're kind of moving back and forth between the various gospel texts, trying to keep it all sort of in chronological order. Um, we are approaching the end of Jesus's life, even though we're only in Luke 13 and 14 today. Um, there's still a lot of Luke left. If we were over in John, we would have even more of the gospel left because half of John's gospel is the last week of Jesus's life, which I'm not sure I really comprehended until even not very long ago. Even with a Bible college degree, it's like, oh wow, that's crazy. John spends half of the gospel talking about everything from Palm Sunday through through the resurrection. So I still have hopes that we'll finish this up by the end of May, beginning of June. So we'll see how it goes. But we're gonna pick up today in Luke chapter 13, verse 10. It says, on a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, woman, you are set free from your infirmity. Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leader said to the people, there are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath. The Lord answered him, you hypocrites, doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her? When he said this, all his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with all the wonderful things he was doing. So, handful of things to talk about there. It's the Sabbath day, and so where is Jesus?
The synagogue.
In the synagogue. That's his SOP. If it's Sabbath, I'll be in the synagogue. He'll be reading, he'll be teaching, he'll be with the people. It's his habit to be a part of corporate worship. And by extension, it should be something that we do as well. But as he's in the synagogue, he notices that there is a woman there who is not just sort of a little hunched or, walking favoring a hip or a shoulder or something. She is bent over 90 degrees. And she has been that way for nearly 2 decades. She cannot straighten up. If she lays down, I think she is laying on her side because otherwise some part of her would be sticking up in the air. So um, Luke says that it is because of the presence of a spirit. That's what has caused her discomfort. And Jesus speaks to her and releases her from this awful situation. And then he puts his hands on her, and immediately she stands up straight and she begins praising God for this amazing miracle. And we would say, man, who wouldn't love to see something like that? And the answer is apparently a leader of the synagogue. If something like that happened here on a Sunday morning in the middle of a church service, somebody came up for prayer, we prayed, and it was obvious that something was immediately physically different, we'd have a hallelujah breakdown. We'd all sing the doxology for an hour, sort of in awe of what God had done. But we read later on that the crowd is delighted. That's what the NIV says. They are happily rejoicing over what they have seen. But not everyone is so thrilled. The synagogue leader doesn't really go after Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. What's his real issue? There in Luke chapter 13. What's his comment?
A lowly woman asked to be healed on the Sabbath. Well, she didn't ask, but
I was going to say, she actually didn't ask. Jesus saw her from the other side of the synagogue, and because he is full of compassion, he called her close and healed her. She didn't even ask.
is there a men's and women's side in the synagogue?
I believe that's accurate. I wouldn't want to have to swear to that in a court of law, but I think that is accurate.
So if he called her over, she'd have to go on the men's side,
Well, maybe they met in the middle.
maybe.
The synagogue leader addresses not Jesus, but he addresses the crowd and says, look, people, we work 6 days a week. We don't do work on the Sabbath. If you want to be healed, don't come on the Sabbath. Come the other 6 days.
Do you think the woman had an expectation to be healed? Or did she just go to sleep?
In my movie, in my head, she's just there because that's what she's done. She goes to the synagogue and she prays and she listens to the scrolls being read, and that's what she does. I'm sure she has prayed over and over again that she could be healed, because who wouldn't? I mean, if your constant view is of the ground all day long. Don't come on the Sabbath to be healed. You just, can you come back next Thursday? Now, that seems kind of petty or nebby or something. Well, let's not do this today. Let's just wait one more day. Just put it off. I mean, 18 years, what's one more day? That seems to be like the big deal. Like, that is not acceptable to Jesus. Come back later is not in Jesus's vocabulary. And that attitude really bothers Jesus. And he calls them hypocrites, fakers, pretenders. You say you're a leader of the people. You say you're righteous. You say you're godly. But this attitude stinks. It absolutely stinks. There isn't anything good down below this mask. I know you've heard me say this a dozen times probably, but the word hypocrite is brought over from Greek language. A hypocrite is an actor on a stage. George Clooney, hypocrite. Chris Pratt, hypocrite. Tom Hanks, hypocrite. Because they put on a false face and they pretend to be somebody else. That's their whole job. So Jesus says, stop pretending. You pretend that you're good and godly and righteous and holy, but you're not, faker. You care more about the animals in the barn than you do this human being who's not just a human. She is a woman who is a daughter of Abraham, just like you. She's a part of the nation of Israel, just like you. And should you have a little more compassion and concern for this sister than you do for your donkey? What's wrong with you? Shame on you. Why make her wait even one more minute? If I have the ability to do something for her right now, why would I wait until tomorrow? I should act now. The Greek text tells us that the leaders blushed with embarrassment. They realized that they had been, whatever the right word is, smacked down. Jesus had clearly made his point, and they were totally embarrassed by the fact that they were so very wrong. Now, I think there's two other little things that kind of come out of this text. One is that, first of all, Jesus just cares, period. When he sees people who are suffering, he does care. There's an old hymn that asks that question. Does Jesus care? Oh, yes, he cares. It's clear that even when it's not some sort of tragically painful emergent situation, that Jesus still cares about what he sees going on in the lives of people. I think we also should pay attention to the fact that this is a woman. There will be some people who would say that the church is all focused on men, and it's always been that way. God doesn't really care about women. They're second-class citizens. Jesus didn't really care about women. All of the disciples were men. All the apostles were men. Yeah, but Jesus really must care about women because he sees her, and his heart goes out to her, and he heals her without her even ever asking for it. I sort of imagine a woman who has just sort of suffered in silence for 18 years. And Jesus offers it.
There's a lot of examples. And touched his hem.
Jesus sees her situation and he releases her. You are freed. You're released from this physical pain and from the whatever spiritual burden it is that has brought it about in the first place. And I think that Jesus teaches us a lesson here, which is not super complicated, that compassion should always win. That seems pretty simple. When it comes to following a rule or displaying compassion, go with compassion. Love wins, grace wins, compassion wins. What do you think? Is there anything else in the story that you'd like to talk about, have a question about?
Well, didn't Jesus kind of like throw gasoline on the fire there? I mean, against the establishment,
He is not afraid to poke the bear.
but I mean, it's also like the next, he's really like, yeah, he's poking the bear, embarrassing him. If I was the opposition there, it's like, okay, dude, you won the battle, but we'll see.
Watch
who
your
wins.
back.
You watch who's gonna win the war here. I mean, that would be my, if I'm looking at the opposing side of that, that would be my thought. You embarrass me in front of all these people? Dude, your day's coming.
What is what's the thing from some movie, you come at me with a knife, I'll come at you with a,
Right.
with a gun and, you know.
Yeah, Jesus, knife to a gunfight, right, basically.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what the makeup of this crowd is and who translates into the next section, if it's any of the same people besides the disciples, if the Pharisees are the same, or the synagogue ruler is the same, or whatever, but I know it's my own prejudices, but I don't necessarily see Jesus as going, oh, now I'm gonna get him, twisting the knife. I think he's just stating facts, and they're humiliating facts. The truth will set you free, and the truth will also embarrass the crap out of you sometimes.
They didn't need any help.
Yeah.
They-
So, but I think that it's interesting that a lot of this, what's going on in this section right here, carries over into the next chapter, which we may or may not get to today. So, anything else? It's all good.
I think they chided her for coming to synagogue on the Sabbath, and she got healed, but I think they'd have equally chided her if she hadn't gone.
Probably, that's probably true. That those who are going to find fault are just going to always find fault.
I think the synagogue leader didn't like being one up. And, so therefore he had to find a silly fault with doing the healing on that.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting. Just the fact that Jesus is in the synagogue with him, that this incredibly well-known celebrity has shown up wherein, it's on his turf. Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but there's probably some possibility for that. I wouldn't like it very much if, some other preacher showed up here on a Sunday morning and started doing things that I wasn't capable of doing. We haven't had a baptism in 5 years, and he shows up and there's 87 people lining up in the baptistry. Oh yeah, I'd be picking at something. All right, well, let's roll on. We're gonna pick up in verse 22 of chapter 13. Then Jesus went through the towns and villages, teaching as he made his way to Jerusalem. Okay, just another reminder, that's the goal, to get to Jerusalem. Someone asked him, Lord, are only a few people going to be saved? He said to them, make every effort to enter through the narrow door, because many, I tell you, will try to enter and will not be able to. Once the owner of the house gets up and closes the door, you will stand outside knocking and pleading, Sir, open the door for us. But he'll answer, I don't know you or where you come from. Then you'll say, wait and drink with you, and you taught in the streets. But he will reply, I don't know you or where you come from. Away from me, all you evildoers. There will be weeping there and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, but you yourselves thrown out. People will come from east and west and north and south and will take their places at the feast in the kingdom of God. Indeed, there are those who are last who will be first, and first who will be last. All right.
I'm a little slow, but did you skip 18 to 20 on purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just because of how things sort of line up, it's possible that we have covered some of that material in another place already, or will again soon. Because again, I'm using this fabulous chronological study Bible, which puts everything in order, which means that everything is screwed up. So. So, little bit different deal. Nobody's being healed. Now it's a question. I'm assuming could, you know, be right after the synagogue lets out. They're making their way towards Jerusalem. We don't have much detail there. But the question is, who is going to be saved? That's a good question. I'd like to know that. Is it everybody? Is it only a few? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be my friends? Who's going to be saved? And again, sort of like the last time we were together, we kind of have some things kind of going back and forth through Jesus's teaching. He goes back to the same thing that he said in earlier about being prepared, watching for things, and especially taking advantage of the time available. At some point, he says, the door for salvation is going to close, and it'll be locked, and it's not going to open again. So, as long as the door is open, people should run, not walk, to that exit. They should do whatever they can to get there quickly. You must come now. And it won't be enough to have spent some time with Jesus or to have heard one of his sermons. Even if you followed him all over the countryside, if you have not believed and you haven't entered into the kingdom, you're not going to get into the kingdom once that door is closed. We've heard other passages sort of like this, and it's going to come up again in the next chapter, of people who assume that some kind of familiarity with Jesus is going to be all they need to be a part of God's kingdom. And Jesus makes it very clear that it's not just knowing about him. It's not just good enough to have memorized 3 points from his last sermon, but you have got to surrender your life and be prepared to follow him all the way to death. Verse 30 deals with the leadership of Israel, I think. They believe that they are the closest and then should be the first into the kingdom of God, but they have turned their backs on the invitation because they've turned their backs on Jesus. And so they will not enter. They have looked down their noses at all the people who have followed Jesus around and sought healing from him and listened to his teaching. They've traveled along with him. The Jewish leadership just shake their head and roll their eyes because these people have been duped. The leadership knows better. They're much closer to God. And Jesus says, the first are going to be the last, if at all. And everybody who was last, everybody who is a secondary citizen, those are the ones who are going to be first. They're willing to accept it. They hear the truth, they accept the truth, they act upon the truth, and so they'll be a part of the kingdom. The door is narrow. An older translation might have straight, S-T-R-A-I-T. It is focused and selective, and it is difficult to get through. And one of the things that Jesus alludes to here is where people are going to come from to enter into the kingdom. He hits all the compass points, north, south, east, and west. So even though he does not say it specifically in so many words, that the Jews are the only ones who will enter into the kingdom, the fact that he includes people from every direction would indicate that people from all over the world are going to be a part of this kingdom of God. It's not just going to be the elite Jewish leadership who knows the law. It's going to be many more people who know who Jesus is and choose to follow him. The NIV has at the beginning of the passage, make every effort. That the word is agonizomai, agonize, the English word that we've brought across from it. It means to endeavor with strenuous zeal, to go through strife, to take great pains. It's the same verb that's used by Paul in 1st and 2nd Timothy when he talks about fighting the good fight. Okay, you're going to pour everything you have. You're going to fight like your very life depends on it, because it does. So, if you see the door open, go. Don't delay. Don't put it off, because you have no idea how long that door is going to be open. Anybody else pay attention to the hot now light at Krispy Kreme? No? When I was in college, that was a big deal. Some of my fellow classmates would just kind of hang out there down by the store and wait for that light to come on, because they knew in that moment the donuts were going to be the absolute best and freshest and amazing. And when that light goes off, they're still okay, but they're not.
Or old.
They're old and cold. And while that is not a perfect illustration, it's not bad off. The light is on. It says open now, y'all come. And eventually that's going to be turned off.
Kind of like musical chairs.
Kind of like musical chairs. There are so many people in the world that believe that door is never going to close, or that if it does close, that God is going to go, just kidding, you all come on in here anyway. And that is not what Jesus says is reality. The owner of the house, the Father, is going to close that door, and once it's closed, nobody will open it again. So come now. What else do you think? Anything?
Conversation just yesterday with my daughter about this, and she believes that we're gonna get one last chance at the end to accept Jesus.
There's a lot of churches, different groups in the world that teach something like that. If I don't choose to believe, then my kids or my siblings or my spouse can make that choice for me after I'm gone. And they can either buy my way into heaven, or pray my way into heaven, or be baptized into heaven. There are churches that teach that after the end, when everything is done, people who have not accepted Jesus are going to get one more sermon. There's going to be one more invitation to come. And I think, well, what kind of idiot standing in front of God at the end of the world would say, no, I'm not sure I believe about that. Of course they would choose to believe. That there's no indication in anything that I read in Scripture that says that's the case. You've got one life, one opportunity to choose. And as long as there's breath, there's hope. But after there's no more breath, there's no hope for change. And the die is cast. It would be awesome if she was right, but I don't think that's what Jesus teaches.
my grandmother was Mormon, my grandfather was Catholic, and he baptized, he hadn't baptized Mormon. I know, it's
Covering his bases.
I'm gonna take it.
That's a lot of religious conflict right there.
Yeah, I mean, that made him, yeah. He died at 66.
Anything else? Okay, I don't notice any waving from the other room, because that's what it would take for me to see it, so. All right, let's roll on then. 1331. At that time, some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, "Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you." And he replied, "Go tell that fox, I will keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. In any case, I must press on today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside Jerusalem." Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house has left you desolate. I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." So my first question is, who's asking this stuff about Herod? Who said that? Is it the Pharisees? No. The Pharisees don't care about Jesus, do they?
Do something.
It says, right?
Yeah. It is clear that even at this stage in Jesus's life and ministry, even as the day of his crucifixion is getting closer and closer and closer, there are Pharisees who really still believe that he is sent from God, like Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, who's a part of the council. There are high-ranking officials who are not prepared to just reject Jesus altogether. It seems like, as I read this, that there are Pharisees that are trying to protect him. If you look over in the book of Acts and Acts 5, there's Gamaliel, who is a Pharisee, a very well-known, high-ranking Pharisee, who was not an enemy of Jesus. He was willing to give Jesus the benefit of the doubt. Over in Acts 15, it tells us that there were believers in Jesus who were Pharisees, like Nicodemus. And if you recall, even Paul was a Pharisee. So it's not that all of them were automatically opposed and forever. So he gets this information. Herod is going to kill you if he gets a hold of you. You ought to go away from here. You need to go hide. And Jesus will not be bullied. He will not be hurried. He will not be silenced. No matter how clever or cunning Herod Antipas may be, the fox, Jesus has a mission, and he will fulfill it according to God's wishes and schedule. God's will be done. Period. Jesus is going to execute it perfectly. Nobody is going to derail him from the path. He does mention the third day here. The timing seems a little funky. Today, tomorrow, but on the third day, I believe that would be a reference to the ultimate third day, after his crucifixion. His death and resurrection are what God has intended all along the way, and it's going to happen. And Herod is not going to speed that up or slow it down. And then we see again, the compassion of Jesus sort of rises to the top again. When he weeps over Jerusalem, he says these words, how I've longed to gather you like a mother hen gathers her chicks. God wants his children to come home. He wants to rescue them. He wants them all to be saved. He is a loving father. And so over and over again, Jerusalem and the Jews have rejected everybody who revealed God's will, whether it was a prophet in the Old Testament or Jesus in the New Testament. It seems like the people of Israel just cannot stop rejecting God's truth. And so Jesus says that God is abandoning Jerusalem. He is abandoning the holy city. He's abandoning the place where his presence dwells, and it's going to be destroyed. And we know that that destruction takes place 30 some years after Jesus's death and resurrection in the year 70. The Romans, after sort of a long battle, destroy the city, burn down the temple. People are killed. And it's an awful thing. And it is because God has left Israel to itself. You have rejected me and rejected me and rejected me. And ultimately, when I send this last perfect revelation of my will to you, you hold it at arm's length and you reject it too. And so I'm out. And it's going to stay that way. This isn't going to be like sending you off to captivity in Babylon and then you come back. It won't be an invading kingdom that's going to come in and rule over you for a few years like the Philistines, and then they're going to leave. This is a permanent abandonment. Jesus quotes a verse that we just heard this last weekend from Psalm 118, verses 25 and 26. We read it on Palm Sunday. It's what the people shout along the parade route as Jesus enters the city. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Though it is hard to see how this conversation applies to that event, which will occur in the not too distant future. I don't think that God is saying, well, because there were some people in Israel who welcomed Jesus as the Messiah, well, I'll come back now. I don't think that's the case at all. More likely, it has to do with the return of the Messiah at the end of all things. And when he comes, he's not coming to save. They've missed that opportunity just about. When the Messiah comes again, he is coming to judge. And they will absolutely recognize him then. There'll be no question. But unfortunately, it will be too late for anybody who has not accepted him as the Messiah. Thoughts? Questions?
Says, for surely no prophet can die outside of Jerusalem. What does that mean?
He's making reference to the fact that Jerusalem has always treated God's prophets horribly. They've arrested them, beaten them, tortured them, executed them. When prophets would come delivering God's word to Israel, they didn't want to hear it, and so they would kill the prophet. Prophets got killed all over, not just in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is, it's the center, it's the hub of everything. So surely there's been no prophet die outside of Jerusalem because you reject them all. Anything else? Okay. I'll just,
And just a question sort of that came up last night in our discussion was, at the time Jesus was crucified, the people that waited, the disciples and his followers that waited after he was buried. One of the groups said, well, they were waiting in faith because they expected him to come back. And others were saying, no, they were probably pretty shocked. And I wondered, was this something that the Jews saw, this kind of violence on a regular basis?
oh yeah,
Here
there
it
were,
would be horrifying.
there are crucifixions that took place all the time. I have read in some places that the Romans would just really literally line the road with crosses with people who had been executed as a warning. Don't misbehave or else we'll kill you, just like this. And that's part of this, the stink of crucifixion, is that it's not just punishment, but it's making you an example to everybody else. I guess I would have to, as much as I would love to believe that the disciples were sitting together praying and singing songs of sweet assurance and victory that Jesus was coming back, that is not how it's painted in the Gospels. That they are terrified, that they have hidden themselves in a room, locked the doors, barred the windows, sitting in the dark, not making a sound, because if they killed Jesus and we're his followers, we're going to be next. As we go through the Gospels, it is not clear ever before the resurrection that the disciples had any idea that Jesus was talking about coming back. Even though he said it again and again and again and again, and on the third day, but they didn't get it. Now, in our group last night, we talked about that. Carol will be the one. Because we're like, one of our group questions was, so why is it that you think the disciples had such a hard time believing Jesus when he talked about this? And one of the things that I would maybe point to is their age and experience. There are some scholars that would say that all of the disciples of Jesus are way younger than he is. If he's 30 something, they're not anywhere close to that. There's only one of them that has a mother-in-law that we know about. Only Peter is married. And when they're paying the temple tax, you had to be above a certain age to pay the temple tax. And when he fishes the coin out of the fish's mouth, go down and catch a fish, and that's the one that'll have a coin in there for me and for you for temple tax. He doesn't do it for the other disciples that are with him. So they must not have, the leap is they must not have needed the temple tax because they're not old enough, which means that Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and Bartholomew, and Philip, and Thomas, and all the rest of them are 17, 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. Do you know any 18-year-old boys that have the ability to understand or anticipate anything farther than what's for dinner?
More so then than now.
Maybe. But I think, I have been a 19-year-old boy. I am the father of a 19-year-old boy who has 19-year-old friends who are all very bright. But man, they're dumb as a post about some stuff. And so why didn't they understand it? Because their brains are not fully developed. They're not thinking long term. I say stuff to my kids all the time that I think is fairly clear and plain and simple, and it just it does not register. I think that these young men are absolutely terrified. It's like to the point of tears and vomiting that they are gonna be executed next. At least in my head, when I read through, that's the image that I get. They're not, boldly defying things, and they're not marching up to the steps of Pontius's palace to say, you've done a horrible injustice here. We demand an apology. They're not making a sound for 2 days. They're hidden. So. Go on. Resounding yes. Okay. Luke 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day or not?" But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" And they had nothing to say. Okay, I think this idea about the Sabbath and the lawfulness of healing is why, it's really close. I don't know if this is just always going to be a recurring theme with Jesus, that it always has been, and so he's always banging this drum, or if it's just because it's been a fairly recent thing. But it seems like they come together pretty closely here. Jesus is at the house of a Pharisee, which I think says something about him. The Pharisees are generally opposed to him. They go out of their way to try and trap him, to try and catch him, to try to embarrass him, to try to diminish him in front of his followers. And while Jesus doesn't really put up with any nonsense from them, he is still willing to go to the home of a Pharisee when he is invited. I don't know if there's any important lesson for us there, but it seems like there could be some kind of an application that it's good for us to spend time with people with whom maybe we disagree. We don't have to just hang out with people who are the leaders of our fan club. We can have a conversation and a meal with somebody who is opposed to us. I saw some video in the last few days that Bill Maher had been invited to go to the White House for dinner with
That was
President
great. That was
President
great.
Trump.
It went really well.
Yeah, and
Shockingly.
and that's the remarkable thing is that they Maher had these expectations that to sit with this president was going to be awful. He could not wait to see that everything he thought about this clown was true. And he came away saying he was gracious, he was engaging, he was charming.
Good sense of humor.
Yeah, it had a very different experience. And so if Jesus can meet with the Pharisees and Bill Maher can meet with Donald Trump, I can probably get along with almost anybody. So you can take whatever application you want from there. You might have to invite a Republican or a Democrat to your next dinner. Okay.
Shoot, you may be related to him.
They may already be there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus is at this house. We don't know where it is, but he's not got any bitterness or resentment. But that doesn't mean that he's just going to let things slide. He's going to point out things that he sees that need pointing out. Yeah, things are going to be fixed. But he accepts the invitation. And so as he's there, surrounded by all these other muckety mucks of the Jewish leadership, they're all watching Jesus like a hawk. I mean, the language that is used means that they are really hanging on every move that he makes. Every eye is on him, no matter what he does, they're paying attention to it. Probably not because they're enamored with him, probably because they want to try to catch him in something. Is he gonna wash his hands before he eats? That was a big thing a few chapters ago. Is he going to say the prayer the right way? Is he going to offer the blessing? How is the host going to deal? They're just watching. And so while they're paying attention to him, Jesus is not paying attention to them. He's looking around the room and he notices that there is a man who has arrived who has got what the NIV calls abnormal swelling. Some older translations have dropsy. Dropsy would be what we today would call edema. That it's just a collection of fluids, which means that it's not just that he had too much water that day. It means that there is something else going on somewhere, whether it is some kidney failure or liver issues or even congestive heart failure. He's a very sick man. Jesus sees this very sick man and does what? Heals him.
Does what he does.
Did the man ask for it?
Nope.
Doesn't seem like it. It's like, man, buddy, that's awful. And now he's healed. It would be interesting to have witnessed that and to see what that healing looked like exactly. Like, did he just kind of like dry up like a raisin all of a sudden? Or did he say, "God, excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom really quick," because he's going to get rid of all that fluid. His diuretic has kicked in. It's right from Jesus. I don't know how that worked, but this man is healed. He does put his hands on him. The bent over lady, he spoke to her and released her, and then he put his hands on her. Here he grabs a hold of him, and that's really, I don't know exactly how he wrapped him up, but that's it. That he wrapped him up in his arms. Maybe just squeezed all the extra fluid out of him. It was a fountain for a minute, but he is healed, and Jesus sends him on his way.
So this is a why question.
Oh, I love
Let me
it.
say it this way. Did you notice that Jesus sent him away? Would he have not been there for dinner?
Probably needed to find a bathroom.
Or
I had that question as well. Is he there because he's a religious leader, or did he see that Jesus, who is a celebrity, is going into this house and just decided he's going to follow him in?
or did the Pharisees bring him in to trap Jesus? That's what I'm thinking.
Could be. It is the Sabbath. What's he gonna do? Hey, you know anybody who's sick? Like somebody who's really sick? Bring them to dinner tonight, and we'll get Jesus in trouble for healing him, because we know he will, because he always doing that kind of stuff. Maybe.
Like how he challenged first. They're all looking at him and he goes, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?"
That's the thing. We're bringing this same question up again. Hey, brothers, it's the Sabbath day. Is it okay if I heal him? Will that be breaking the law?
And he does it anyway. They didn't say a word.
Well, he did that to him a few times. Asks them a question that they don't really dare answer. Because neither one of their answers would be correct. Or like,
Mm. Where did I put that note? He brings up the same kind of rescue question again. Before it was, if your ox or donkey falls into a pit, wouldn't you fish it out? Here it's, you know, if your child or an ox falls into a well, I guess in the first one, he's letting it out of the barn to get a drink and to eat, which the answer would be yes. And here they fall into a pit. You're not gonna leave them down there. Sorry, you got 12 more hours down there, buddy. Hang in. No, you'll pull them out. So obviously the answer is yes, but these leaders won't give an answer. They are mute. They're not going to argue with him. They know they can't contradict him. They know he's right. They know that they're wrong, and there's really nothing they can say. So it sort of seems like the theme here is if you have the ability to help someone, you should do it, regardless of what day it is. That's the loving thing. That is the compassionate thing. That is the godly thing to do. The Sabbath day is supposed to be about freedom, freeing people from work, freeing people from slavery, freeing people from bondage. It was always designed by God to be a day of renewal and restoration for his people. So why not do this on Sabbath? It's much more in keeping with the Sabbath than saying, well, sorry, you're gonna have to wait. Oh, well, when you slept through it, oh, you'll have to wait another week. Sorry. That is not compassion. If you have the ability to help someone, you should do it, no matter what day, no matter the circumstances. What do you think? I'm clearly not asking the right kinds of questions.
Kindness is always on the calendar.
Kindness is always on the calendar. That's good. The word that is used to describe how Jesus wrapped the man up, grabbed a hold of him, can also mean he just helped him. The old word that I don't know is succor, succor. I've never used that word in a sentence in my life, but apparently it means to give aid to somebody else. So Jesus gives aid to the man and sends him on his way. If you can help, you should help. Occasionally we have that debate in our car. Oh my gosh, look at those people on the side of the road. We should stop. Sweetheart, I am no help to those people. Their car is on fire. There are no pieces of it left. I have not got the ability to do anything. Like that's an overblown exaggeration, but I do not have, unless it's changing a tire or filling the windshield washer fluid, I'm really not much help to these people right now. I can call, we can stop and ask if they have a phone, if they called somebody to come and help, but I really can't do anything. I would like to. Had that experience in California on the way back from our trip. We pulled into a gas station to fill up and, do the bio break and get a new round of snacks. And there was a lady who was trying to pull away from the gas pump, and it was like the car was just jerking all over the place. I really don't know what to do. So I came around and parked and started gas going in our car. And that lady's still trying to get out of the parking lot. I would go about 6 inches and then freeze like. Okay, so I went over and knocked on one like, can I help you? I'm not very good, but is there something I can do? Well, what's going on? Well, it's a rental car and I don't know how to get I don't know what's going on. There's this thing that's on and that seems to be the problem, but I don't know how to turn it off. And it's because there's no real instructions anywhere. She was having to try to Google it on her phone and figure out which thing she needed to flip. She said, if you want to get in and take a look, go ahead. All right. So like, it looks like the parking brake is stuck. So I'm looking underneath the dash. There's not the good, the pedal that you push and release. There's not a handle, like. So there's down in the console, beside the shifting nub, which isn't a stick, it's just the thumb that sticks up. There was a little orange light on, like, I bet that's probably it. So pushed it, pulled it, nothing changed. Like, what if I hold it down? Held it down and the light went off and the car rolled. She's like, oh, how did you do that? So occasionally I do get lucky and I can help somebody, but and I said to my boys who were in the car with me afterward, like, I would hope that if somebody else saw my wife or my daughter stuck like that, that somebody would help them. So that's why I helped her. That's what you need to do. You need to keep that in mind. Would you want your sister or your mom or your wife to be stranded someplace and nobody's gonna help her there? I'll keep going past. You do what you can. And sometimes the best thing you can do is tell you what, I'm gonna pray and give you my phone and you can go from there. I like these deals here in Luke 13 and 14. Jesus seems really human. He seems very compassionate. It's clear that he likes people and wants to do what he can to help them. So, Carol.
We had a similar kind of thing happen on our vacation to us with San Diego. Another, I rental car. And my son, we waited a long time for a spot to open up the African Safari Park.